Hello everyone, my name is Peymana Assad and I'm the co-founder and chair of the Labour Foreign Policy Group. Welcome to our panel discussion today about the Middle East. Thank you so much to everyone for making the time. There is a buffet lunch behind you and teas and coffees to my left, so please do help yourselves. Today we are here to discuss shaping the future, Britain's role in a changing Middle East and North Africa. As the Middle East undergoes rapid geopolitical shifts driven by evolving security alliances, economic transformation, and renewed global power competition, Britain must define its role in a changing region. Under the Labour government, the UK faces critical decisions on how to engage with key partners like Bahrain, which plays a strategic role in Gulf security, interfaith dialogue, and regional diplomacy. The panel that we have here today will explore how Britain can navigate these changes, balancing security cooperation, diplomatic engagement, and economic partnerships to contribute to long-term stability. With the UK's recent security agreement with Bahrain reinforcing its military and strategic footprint in the Gulf, what does this signal for the broader UK-Middle East relationship? And how can Britain work with regional allies to promote peace, counter extremism, and support diplomatic initiatives, particularly at a time of shifting US foreign policy under a Trump administration? We will also talk about free trade agreements with the GCC and as part of the Labour Foreign Policy Group's ongoing work examining foreign policy under the Labour government, this discussion will assess how the UK is shaping and adapting effectively to the region's changing dynamics. I have an incredible esteemed panel with me today, and I'm going to introduce them from left to right. So right on my end is Gabrielle Rifkind. She's the director of the Oxford Process. She's a group analyst specializing in conflict resolution and an accredited mediator. Gabrielle combines in-depth political and psychological expertise with many years' experience in promoting serious analysis and dialogue. Her focus of work over the past 2 decades has been the Iran nuclear issue, the proxy war in Syria, and the Palestine-Israel conflict. She's most recently been working on the Ukraine-Russia conflict and keeping lines of communication open between the warring parties. She is a passionate believer in preventative diplomacy, and she's an author and frequent contributor to the media. She's also got a book, Fog of Peace, How to Prevent War. So please do go and read that. Gabrielle is amazing in what she does. Next to Gabrielle, we have Louise Sander-Jones MP. She is a Member of Parliament for North East Derbyshire and the Minister for Veterans and People in the Ministry of Defence. Congratulations on your recent promotion. She was elected in July 2024 after taking the seat from the Conservatives. After graduating with a degree in Chinese from the University of Edinburgh, Louise served in the British Army as an intelligence officer, including a deployment to Afghanistan. After leaving the military, she worked in the private sector, leading intelligence analysis on the impact of natural disasters. And on my right, we have His Excellency, Ambassador Al Khalifa. The ambassador was appointed by His Majesty, Sheikh Fawaz bin His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa as ambassador to the Court of St. James, accredited to the Republic of Ireland and the Kingdom of Spain and Iceland. Before becoming ambassador, His Excellency served in a number of roles, most recently as Minister of State for Communication. He was president of the Information Affairs Authority and previously served as the president of the General Organization for Youth and Sports. Prior to his professional career, His Excellency, the Ambassador, obtained a BA in Criminal Justice from the American University in Washington, D.C., and an MA in Public Administration from the University of South California in Los Angeles. He's also a graduate of the Royal Military College Sandhurst, and he has been awarded a number of honors of service in Bahrain, including the Order of the Sheikh Isa bin Salman Al Khalifa First Class, the Order of Bahrain First Class, and the Order of Achievement First Class. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for being with us. Next to the ambassador, we have Alex Ballinger MP. Alex is a Labour Party politician and Member of Parliament for Helzone? Helzone.
Not Helzone.
Okay. I always pronounce this wrong, Alex. Alex served in the Royal Marines from 2005 until 2013, undertaking 2 tours of Afghanistan and attaining the rank of captain. Upon leaving the armed forces, Alex pursued a career in international development, working on projects across the Middle East and Pakistan. Before his election to Parliament in 2024, Alex ran a charity supporting people experiencing mental health challenges. He now sits on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee Committee and chairs the All-Party Parliamentary Group on the Armed Forces and the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Conflict Prevention, Conflict Resolution and Peace Building. So that is our esteemed panel. And the run of order today will be, we will have opening remarks from each of our speakers, and then I will ask them a few questions, maybe one or two, depending on what they've said in their opening remarks. And then we will come to Q&A. Please make sure that you don't give me speeches in your questions, and just make sure you're ready with your questions and keep them short. So first we have Louise Santa-Jones MP. Thank you.
First off, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this panel, and thank you very much for everyone for coming along. And I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. I thought I would start off with just some recollections of my own story and how that applies to this topic, because I'm reminded by hearing the bio of His Excellency that both of us are graduates of the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, and I think that really captures neatly actually some of the key planks of the relationship that we have with many places across the Middle East. I can look back to my time at Sandhurst, which is fast disappearing in the rearview mirror, unfortunately. And there were several cadets who were going through alongside me from places like Bahrain or UAE or Qatar. And that kind of cooperation and relationship continued throughout my time in the military, and I know it continues across other branches. We have many forces deployed across the Middle East in places like Bahrain and in the UAE. And indeed, the business that I was mostly involved with as well was in Afghanistan. And indeed, the security of the Middle East and North Africa is absolutely integral to those of us who live in Europe for many different reasons, many of which I don't need to repeat here. And I think it's really important that when we look at the variety of issues across the Middle East and North Africa, where unfortunately there are a number of conflicts, and really when we are trying to do what we can to solve those conflicts, I think it's never more important than understanding how we need to work together as a team. And that team needs to go all the way down, all the different levels of our individual nations, whether that is governments cooperating or even just as simple as having cadets at Military Academy Sandhurst serving alongside each other and building those relationships which really make a difference when you're trying to deliver a project on the ground. I think, there's lots of particular examples where these kind of relationships have been incredibly important. I'm thinking, for example, of freedom of navigation through the sea lanes that we have, like the Suez Canal, for example. I'm looking at security of our wider partners and allies. We have been very involved with ensuring security across places like Iraq and Syria as well, sort of stands out as another example. And I think as we're going forwards, I think the challenge for us in how we work together to solve some of the challenges of the Middle East, I think have never been greater or more urgent. We're all aware of many of the difficulties that we're facing. But I think it's also important to look at the opportunities that we have going forwards. And that is actually realising how many people are out there trying to help and how we can work together with other nations with the same goal and keep deepening that cooperation. Obviously now sat here as a member of the government, I'm now more involved with the diplomacy side than I was with the working with cadets at Sandhurst. And I think this is a really important point, that we have to keep working and we have to keep playing our role and recognising that we have a role to play. There are many people now who are quite happy to push the narrative that we shouldn't ever stick our noses out for anybody for anything. And that is absolutely what that kind of attitude is something that we must continue to fight back and say that we in this country, we have values and we're going to stick up for those values and we're going to work with partners that share those values as well. It's always a difficult job, but that has never stopped me or any of my colleagues from trying to do what we can and keep fighting for what we believe in. So I'm very excited to hear what everybody else has here to help us in that fight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. And it's really important that we do have those partnerships in the region. So I'm really glad that we have His Excellency, the Ambassador, with us today. So Your Excellency, please.
Thank you, Peymana. Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers, guests, it is a great pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel discussion. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our Bahraini perspective.
I just want to bring that a bit closer. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. As a close strategic partner of the United Kingdom and its current and future role in the Middle East, our region is rich with vast oil and gas reserves and blessed with a strategic location in the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. This combination of economic resources and geopolitical importance makes the Middle East a constant center of global attention. As an island nation state, maritime security and freedom of navigation are key pillars of Bahrain national security. In this light, Bahrain is a host to the world's largest maritime security construct, the Combined Maritime Forces, CMF, to counter illicit non-state actors in the high seas, covering an area of 3.2 million square miles of international waters. The CMF is comprised of 47 countries and is led by a U.S. Navy Vice Admiral and a UK Royal Navy commander that serves as its deputy. Meantime, maritime security is crucial for global trade. Around 20% of global oil and gas flows through the Strait of Hormuz. 15% of global seaborne trade passes through the Suez Canal. So when the Houthis attacked the commercial shipping in the Red Sea, it caused a 1.3 decrease in global trade, which raised shipping costs and increased global inflation. Unnecessary escalation is bringing the whole region to the brink of a full-blown regional conflict. Most recently, we have seen the reckless military attacks against Qatar, rightly condemned across the world and a clear violation of national sovereignty and the principles of international law. Meantime, the situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate with the tragic human cost. Like the United Kingdom, we in Bahrain continue to call to strongly and urgently for a ceasefire, for the release of all hostages, and for the full delivery of humanitarian and reconstruction aid to Gaza and its people. In this regard, we reiterate our support for the Arab and Islamic plan for recovery and reconstruction in the Gaza Strip, and the rejection of any forced displacement, settlement expansion, or attempts to alter the historical and religious status quo of Jerusalem. Further, we greatly welcome the UK's recognition of the State of Palestine, which sends an important message that the two-state solution is the only lasting and effective way to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. To this end, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa called for an international peace conference in the Middle East, leading to a comprehensive and sustainable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through direct negotiations, as endorsed by the 33rd Arab Summit, the Bahrain Summit. And as geopolitical developments are forcing countries to new alliances, we in Bahrain are recommitting to doubling down on our traditional partnerships, especially with the United Kingdom and the United States, which Bahrain has signed 2 defense agreements so far this year. Additionally, the UK joined the Comprehensive Security Investment Prosperity Agreement, CSIPA, between Bahrain and the United States earlier this year, which will serve as a framework for a new regional security architect and economic cooperation. And just last week, we signed a training agreement with the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, an agreement that bolsters relationship and cooperation between our 2 military academies. Just as Britain has long been a key player in the region, the Middle East, and North Africa, it is considerable importance to the United Kingdom, whether in terms of alliances, investment, trade, or many other fields. These ties between the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Bahrain are built on solid grounds, and it is a multi-layered relationship that spans over 200 years and covers a vast range of cooperation, including the areas of defense, security, trade, investment, and culture. In addition to the 2 strategic investment partnership agreements signed in recent 2 years between Bahrain and the United Kingdom, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which includes Bahrain, is currently negotiating a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, which is estimated to increase the current 57 billion trade value by 16% to at least 65 billion, and increase the UK's workers' wage by up to 1.1 billion pounds every year, and grow the UK's GDP by up to 3.1 billion pounds. Indeed, the GCC bloc as a whole is equivalent to the UK third largest non-European export market behind the US and China. The negotiating teams held 8 rounds consisting of between 24 to 36 meetings in each round, alternating between London and Riyadh. 10 chapters have been agreed already, and the majority of the remaining chapters have only a couple of articles left to conclude. With the tremendous progress achieved by the negotiating teams, we are looking forward to officially sign the FTA during this December, during the 46th Gulf Summit that will be held in Manama, Bahrain. From this perspective of the Middle East, we will continue to work alongside our British friends to advance our common values and to spread peace, security, and development across the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. And it's so interesting that you mentioned the mediation currently happening in the region around Israel-Palestine. And so it's great that we have Gabrielle with us. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts, Gabrielle.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me and creating this kind of opportunity. And thank you to the audience as well. I'm going to speak through a conflict resolution lens. So I direct something called the Oxford process. And what we do is we work quietly behind the scenes trying to ripen the conditions for peacemaking. The problem is when there's war, people are not in the mood. And in fact, it does enormous damage to people's psychological states or even the possibility of imagining peace. And of course, in this conflict, with the endless cycles of violence that have been going on since, probably some people would say even a century, it means that you have on both sides very traumatized groups who find it very difficult to make some of the steps towards end of conflict. Now, it's not symmetrical. I mean, we had the horrors of the 7th of October, but now the asymmetrical backlash, and with Israel using its military and its it means the level of suffering for the Palestinians, with over 65,000 people who've died in Gaza, makes it even more difficult because of the power imbalance there. But one of the problems is nobody's in the mood for peacemaking. And, on both sides, and in fact, what we try and do is very quiet back channels at a high level to begin to think what could end of conflict look like. And at the height of war, nobody wants to be seen to be doing that. Nobody wants to be seen to be talking to the enemy. And also, people have suffered so much that it becomes very difficult to think about peacemaking. Now, it's hard, I think it's very, very hard in this conflict because of the level of suffering, for people not to take sides. For people, so I don't know how it reflects itself in this meeting, but most people are either passionately pro-Palestinian or passionately pro-Israel. And actually what we have to be is pro-end of conflict. We have to put all our imagination into thinking what are some of the steps that are needed to be taken to get to end of conflict. And of course, number one, without any kind of ceasefire, it's impossible to imagine what needs to be done, and also some of just the practical needs of the Palestinians. It's essential that people, 80% or 90% of the population have been displaced, homeless, without access to clean sanitation water. This is number one. Human needs need to be addressed, but we will not get that till we get a ceasefire. On the other side, and I work with both sides, I know the Israeli mindset is a kind of, you must be naive to think that that there's going to be a parallel state, or there's a kind of cynicism. But I think we have to move beyond this, and we have to move and address people's states of mind. You actually have to start where people are, not where you want them to be, and how to get them to imagine what things could look like. Now, I think, and the ambassador spoke to this, one of the key areas where there is potentially some hope is about Israel making some of the steps to be part of a regional agreement. The Arab Peace Initiative, or what it might mean contemporarily. But for that to happen, that will not happen without a pathway to peace for the Palestinians. And that whilst, and I know there are many Israeli voices in Israel, and we hear the hardline voice of this government. But there will be a moment where and I know that some of these people recognise that they need a different regional relationship. So I think in terms of what can the British government do, everything to encourage this long-term vision of what regional relationships look like, with also has to be a pathway to peace for the Palestinian. But I don't think that's for the birds. I do think this is a potential way forward. The other area that's absolutely essential for peacemaking is the need for leadership on both sides. And without no leadership happened, any of the successful outcomes, whether you're looking at Northern Ireland or South Africa, without the kind of leadership that gives a vision for peace. And this is tragically lacking on both sides. One of the things I've been doing is I've been working with Arab Barghouti, son of Marwan Barghouti, who I brought to this country on 3 or 4 occasions, and the British government's always very keen to meet him, and have recognised the importance of Marwan Barghouti. The problem is he's had 23 years in prison, but he's always had this vision: how do you live side by side with Israel? Now, we don't know what this side by side will look like, what form a state might take, or whether it's a confederation, but the essence is, how do people learn to live together without violence? And when people have been exposed to so much violence, and it's almost become the kind of belief, this is how you get this is how you get world attention, but also how you suppress the other. But we all know that actually this kind of military approach is utterly short-term, that end of conflict in the end, however the horrors. And we have to remember that World War II, 80 million people died. The terrible, terrible figures of what happens in war. But we also have to hold on to the belief that in the end, how do people live together with their radical differences? So I'll hand over.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. That's an incredibly interesting perspective. And I'll come now to Alex. You've got military background, but also now foreign affairs, and I think you were at the Foreign Office at one point. No?
Yeah.
So lots to bring in from your expertise. So I'll let you take it away, Alex.
Thank you, Peymana. And great to follow on from the other speakers. I entirely endorse Gabrielle's position on peace building, and the situation in Gaza right now, of course, is devastating. But this panel, I think, was to talk about the situation across the Middle East. So very happy to go more into Gaza. But there are so many other conflicts that are affecting the region right now as well. Of course, some of that is the spillover from the war between Israel and Hamas that has leached into Lebanon, into Hezbollah in Syria, into Qatar, and then the ongoing conflict with Iran. We've had the overthrow of Assad's government, which in many ways is a massive success, and then the civil wars in Yemen and Libya and Sudan are all kind of raging hugely, but getting much less political attention and much less media attention than the rightly appalling thing in Gaza. So I wanted to, as an MP and as someone that's worked on some of these issues, take a bit of a step back and think. So what does the British public think about these things? What does the British public think about what's going in the Middle East? I think it's too easy to assume that people think, oh, we shouldn't get involved. We should step away. It's nothing to do with us. The UK has no sort of stake in these conflicts. Because people in the UK, they fundamentally care about a few things. They care about fairness, and that is why I think they are looking at what's going on in Gaza right now and seeing like the inherent injustice in the situation. But they also care about bread and butter things like the cost of living, and we heard what the interdictions of ships in the Red Sea are causing to food prices and energy prices that are happening in the UK. They care about illegal migration. There is no coincidence that the top 3 countries or nationalities that are coming to the UK on small boats are Middle Eastern countries, Syria, Iran and Afghanistan, Central Asian countries, that have all been deeply affected by conflict in recent years. And they also care about extremism. And we know from all of the evidence we've seen and all of our experience working in the region that conflict is the biggest driver of fundamentalism. And that spills over out of the Middle East into Europe and causes enormous problems for us in the UK. So there is a clear justification for us to be being involved in these issues. And I'm chair of the all-party group for peace building, conflict resolution and the like, so I will endorse, of course, everything that Gabrielle is talking about. But I want to give some examples of where things have worked well and where investing at times when there seems to be no possible solution is exactly the right time to be getting involved and working towards peace and working towards the resolution of these conflicts. So I was based in Turkey and Jordan at various different times and working alongside people that were working on the war in Syria, right at the height of the civil war when Assad was committing all these appalling atrocities. Now, the British government was investing heavily in the White Helmets, was investing heavily in civil society organisations, investing in the kind of reform-minded, tolerant, kind of pluralistic society that we would like to see in Syria. Now, the civil war hasn't gone in the direction any of us expected, but those groups that we were investing in all those years ago are now the groups that give us the biggest hope of a Syria that is going to be tolerant and pluralistic and that respects human rights and can be rebuilded in a way that creates a country that is going to be a positive beacon for the region. Now, we should not be stepping away as we have been through our development budget from investing in those types of peace building, those types of conflict resolution methods. And we should be leaning heavily into our United Nations position. So we have on the Foreign Affairs Committee been doing an inquiry into the UK's role at the UN. Many of those countries I just talked about, the UK is the penholder on those conflicts, Yemen, Libya and Sudan. And we have this fantastic diplomatic network and a fantastic team of people that are able to convene countries and work towards long-term solutions. Now, I would be suggesting, for all those reasons that the public support, for all of those reasons that it's in our national interest, that we are investing financially in those sort of peace-building efforts in the Middle East. But we should also be working hard behind the scenes, using that diplomatic network to really achieve the goals that are in the best interest of the region as well, even if that sometimes feels that it's impossible, even if that sometimes feels that we might be upsetting some of our closest allies. We should be using those positions to achieve the peace that is so necessary.
Thank you so much, Alex. I want to get into some of the more meatier issues. So I'm going to start with a question to Louise. The ambassador mentioned the Houthis, and Alex also mentioned them in terms of attacking supply chains in the Red Sea and impacting prices here in the UK around food. But it seems like on social media there is this narrative that the Houthis are sort of defenders of the Palestinian cause and, attacking Israel, and therefore their cause is just. And I just wanted to get your perspective on this based on your military background and also now that you're a government minister here in the UK. How do we engage on this issue around the Houthis, especially the narrative that they have on social media, and what is the government's position on this?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to highlight the impact that their actions have, as Alex really well spelled out, on people here in the UK. Before becoming elected, since becoming elected, I often got asked, should we raise defence spending? And I always found it very, very difficult to answer yes to that, because I can see firsthand all the other public services that are crying out for money. It's very difficult to say we should spend more on defence when you want more nurses, more teachers to fix crumbling schools and hospitals. But we also can't ignore the fact that actually security, which can be affected by events many hundreds and thousands of miles away, has on everybody's living standards here in the UK. The reason why our energy bills are as high as they are is directly impacted by the events in Ukraine. And when you look at how vital our international and global supply chains are, how important it is that shipping can continue unimpeded. Now, as anybody who's ever served in the military or knows anything about military conflicts know, there is the military conflict itself, and there is the conflict that's carried out on the ground. But there is also the narrative around it that is fundamental. And we often talk about the first casualty of war being the truth. Yeah. And that is sadly very often the case. The situation with the Houthis, they have their reasons for their activity that they're doing, and they also need to maximise the impact of their actions. And one way to do that is to tie it to other events that might be more globally higher profile for their own reasons. And we see that in many different conflicts around the world. And I think that's a really important point, that we need to be very clear in why we value free shipping, why we reject the attacks, why we continue to support the security of shipping going through. And I think it's an interesting one when you talk about winning the social media battle. It's a very contested space. There are plenty of bad faith actors on there. There are good faith actors as well, but there's plenty of bad faith actors. And many social media sites can be very heavily influenced and manipulated. And I think it's one of those things where government has its role to play. But I think it's also something that the wider public also needs to understand, is how we interact ourselves with social media. And how we view what we can see, just a quick video, a quick tweet, anything like that, and to remember context, and to be curious, and to not take at first value things that we read or things that we see. When it comes back to the wider point of linking it to the conflict in Gaza, the really key thing is that we get that ceasefire in Gaza. And that is the message that we in government need to push to get that ceasefire. We will not achieve that. The Houthis are not helping to achieve that. That is not their aim. They will continue their actions regardless of what happens. But we need to stand firm in what we're trying to achieve and the messaging around that.
Thank you so much for that answer, very clear. Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to come to you next in terms of this mention around trade and the importance of trade. And you mentioned in your opening remarks that the GCC is currently negotiating the free trade agreement with the United Kingdom. What are the things that Bahrain is very focused on in regards to that free trade agreement with the GCC? And also, if you could elaborate a little bit more as well about Bahrain's position on the Houthis.
Thank you. Well, as I mentioned, the GCC UK Free Trade Agreement is one of several the GCC has been negotiating. At this time, we have 5 or 6 various free trade agreements that we are currently negotiating. The UK would be one of the oldest treaties, I think, but it's one of the most important to us in the GCC because of the sheer volume. We think that in a couple of years, we will be the second largest trading partner to the United Kingdom as GCC, with areas vast, whether it's trade, finance, and various other sectors. Last night, I heard the trade secretary mention that there were 16 million UK nationals working in agriculture, and one of the areas that we are looking for in this free trade agreement is how to take advantage of this field and depend on UK produce rather than currently what we get from Australia, for example. With this free trade agreement, produce made in the UK would be much more competitive in terms of pricing. So there are vast areas of cooperation. What we need to do from now on is how to filter this information to various sectors of the economy and how to take best advantage of this free trade agreement. From Bahrain's point of view, we look at this as a two-way. So we would like to take advantage of this free trade agreement by being in a center point. So what we're offering companies and businesses from the United Kingdom is a center point. Our port is strategically located right in the middle of the Gulf, with flights of 1 hour to every single capital in the Gulf. We have a free zone for UK goods in Bahrain. We've also have what it takes being in the financial sector, financial center in the GCC. So the financial sector in Bahrain has been there for the last 30 years, and it has its adequate conflict resolution mechanism in place. So multinational companies will feel free and will feel at home in Bahrain. So how to reposition Bahrain to take advantage of this is a priority for us. You've mentioned the Houthis, and we are the only country in the Middle East to participate in the coalition against the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. We're also looking at the Houthis in terms of the collaboration they have with Iran and how Iran is supplying weapons to the Houthis and using them as a proxy to their agenda. So a lot of that, a lot of what the minister have mentioned in terms of the public and private chat and social media and what these groups send out in terms of fake information that they are the defenders of the Palestinian cause, where the truth is they're defending the Iranian interests in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. I will come to questions in a bit. I'm just going to ask one more question of both our panel, and then I will come to the audience. Alex, you've got military background and FCDO background. I just want to bring in your perspective because we have a Trump administration in the US, and he's doing a lot of stuff in the Middle East, and he's saying that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize and that he wants to negotiate this Gaza peace plan. And I know that we've mentioned Iran, and the ambassadors just mentioned Iran too. And you were talking about the things that the people in the UK care about in terms of fairness, tackling extremism, and knowing that conflict is the biggest driver. So where do you think the UK sits in all of this in terms of you're on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, and you've got Trump in the White House, and then the UK is also trying to work with partners in the Middle East, specifically Bahrain, for example, and others like Qatar, to negotiate these type of peace deal. Do you think that the UK is shaping that? Do you think that we're involved in these conversations directly, properly, or are we sort of on the sidelines watching?
So we shouldn't be under any illusion that the UK is central to any of these discussions, and I think we can tell that by how Netanyahu's disregarded all of the steps that we've taken in reaction to the appalling war crimes that have been happening in Gaza, including the recognition of Palestine, the sanctions, the weapons embargo, all things and steps that I supported and do support. But that hasn't changed the behaviour of the main aggressor in the conflict in Gaza and the person that really has the power to end the conflict. I think it's very interesting that today Trump is meeting Netanyahu and they're having a discussion. There's lots of plans being talked about. To me, they look very similar to the plans that Biden was putting forward when he was the president, and that were rejected by Netanyahu at that time. One of the advantages we do have as the UK in this space is Trump's affinity for the UK and the long historic relationship the two countries share. And I know that when Trump came to Windsor, when he came for the state visit a few weeks ago, on the agenda, as well as UK-American trade and the war in Ukraine, was the situation in Gaza. And I am 100% confident that the Prime Minister was talking to him about the situation, what the UK's position was, and how we feel strongly that a ceasefire is the only way forward, and the only way we can reach a ceasefire is by opening negotiations. Now, I hope those messages have reached the White House. As I say, we are not the most influential country anymore, but I'm glad that we're playing our role. I will only say further that one thing we have been very good at across the board, not just in the Middle East, is bringing together coalitions of other countries that are like-minded. Now, I was really pleased to see Canada, Australia recognise Palestine alongside the UK. I think there are 10 other countries, or 10 countries in total, that recognised it during that week. That is a really powerful message to Netanyahu and to the Palestinian people that we support their fundamental right for independence, but also we strongly oppose the direction of the war. And if we do that as a coalition, we are much more effective than doing that independently. And that's the same approach we've taken, of course, on Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Alex. Gabrielle, very quickly, to come to you before I go to the audience for questions. The Middle East is one of the youngest populations. They have one of the youngest populations. And it's really important to get young people to come along on these peace deals and peace processes. I know that you work a lot with young people in the region. Could you just tell us a little bit about how you think that they could help push towards conflict resolution?
Well, I don't actually work with young people.
Oh, I thought you did.
But I do have some thoughts, because actually we work with political processes, the political leadership. But I think that what's happening in terms of civil society is absolutely crucial, and that you need civil society to join up with the politics, that you need to be able to take the people with you. And part of the terrible frustrations on the ground is people feel that they're not being heard. But it's a very delicate dance, because to move forward in terms of political process, that you can't have too many actors involved to make things happen. In fact, one of the reasons peace processes fail is, I remember on Syria, there were about 42 people around the table in Istanbul. Actually, you need very, very small numbers of people working quietly behind the scenes for a long time. You need to take the people with you, and that is in some ways the art of leadership, particularly such traumatized communities. So I'd say it's a very delicate dance.
Thank you so much. Right now, I'm going to come to the audience. We've got a mic here. Sorry, Ajira's coming up. I will take them in three. Please say your name, any organisation that you're representing, and keep your question to a question, no speeches, okay? So I'll have Naveen right here at the front, this lady here with the laptop, and then that gentleman at the back with the green jumper. Yeah. So Naveen first here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, and for all the other speakers as well. So I'm Naveen Sanduka. I'll stand up. I come from Palestine. I'm a Palestinian from Jerusalem, and I actually work with the Alliance for Middle East Peace, ALMAP, which is a coalition of 180 peacebuilding organizations, both Palestinians and Israelis. And we have been working to raise the voice of civil society organizations specifically around a regional approach and peace building, ending the war in Gaza and bringing hope and peace to the region. And we actually produced recommendations around what a two-state solution can look like, around the international humanitarian law, around Gaza reconstruction. And I was just wondering how the role of civil society and all the recommendations that we came up with can be heard and can be taken seriously by both the Arab world and our friends in the UK as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Naveen. So the lady here at the front with the laptop.
Mrs. Laptop.
Hi, I'm Sophie Ing. I'm a journalist at Politico. I had a question for the ambassador on UK GCC negotiations. You said you hope to conclude by the end of this year. Does this mean that there is now a consensus between GCC nations on outstanding issues? And could you give an insight into which chapters have yet to be agreed? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And then there's the gentleman with the green jumper, glasses. Yeah.
I have a question for Alex. I'll stand up as well. I just want to quickly preface my question first to say that I really do challenge the framing of what's happening in Gaza right now as a conflict. This is not a conflict, it's a genocide. And if we don't acknowledge that as a starting point, well then I don't think we're accessing or applying the correct tools to respond to the situation. I'm from Friends of the Earth. Friends of the Earth Palestine, our sister organisation, has had 10 members killed by Israeli military activity. Some people who were attacked while they were being displaced. Given that the UN Commission of Inquiry has recently established that Israel is committing genocide in Palestine, or in Gaza, when is the UK government going to start to uphold its obligations under international law to prevent genocide, crucially, and what will the Foreign Affairs Select Committee do to ensure that that happens?
Thank you very much. So in terms of the role of civil society and how they will be heard by Arab countries, but also by the UN or other agencies, the Ambassador, would you like to go first on this question?
On the role of...
on the role of civil society being heard.
It's very important, especially for the day after. Currently, we all know what we need to do, stop the war, release the hostages, aid in, and so on. But the day after, we need the civil society, not just to help on the ground, but even to get aid in effectively and efficiently, and also to help with decision makers in terms of their presence on the ground. So we need civil society to help, especially for the day after.
Thank you so much. And also, if you might as well, at the same time, take the question around the UK GCC negotiations and consensus, and whether there has now been some agreement or on any chapters.
Sure. The agreement has 30 chapters, so we've agreed on 10 chapters. I have to, first of all, compliment the Labour government on its commitment to the FTA. We've seen with the new minister and the previous Labour minister working very hard in trying to resolve all the issues. The recent visit of the Saudi Commerce Minister, for example, he picked up the phone, called his colleagues in the GCC, solve 3 chapters right then and there. So there is a will on both sides to resolve all these chapters. One of the issues still remaining is the protection of investments. Now, 4 countries in the GC have signed protection of investments with the United Kingdom. 2 haven't, and the still negotiations there to resolve that issue. In terms of market accessibility, the GCC will offer 90% of its market, and now the negotiations is what sectors the GC wants to protect, and at what time, and what's the time frame for that. The UK has opened up its market 100%, and we're looking at also some areas that we could work on and exploit, and maybe get the right investment in the right place. So it's a two-way road, and it's I think there is a lot of potential investments that will come up, but they're all looking at the guidance of the FTA and where will the benefits be.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Before I come to you, Alex, on the genocide question and what the UK government is going to do to uphold international law, Gabrielle, I would like to ask you about the role of civil society and how they can be heard. What you think is the best route for civil society to take, but also for Western politicians and leaders?
Well, I mean, I think you know the answer to your question better than us, actually. I think it's really important to listen to the voices on the ground and how people are thinking. Because unless you hear that, you cannot ripen the conditions. You have to understand how public opinion is thinking and what would allow them to believe it's possible to get to end of conflict. And because so much of the problem around this is, you know, I've already said, is to do with states of mind and the horrors and trauma of war. And so ripening the conditions is essential. And I think organisations like yours are incredibly important to that. But I'm quite sure the British government is listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Alex, on the question from our friend over there around the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and its role in helping the UK uphold international law.
It's a very important question, but before I come on to that, I will just support Olmec's proposals for a Israel-Palestine International Fund for Peace. We heard from them at the Foreign Affairs Committee. I think this isn't going to change the situation on the ground immediately, but it's a necessary step towards getting a two-state solution that is sustainable. And so you have our support from the committee. I hope I can speak for all the members. And I hope the Prime Minister, who is committed to doing this, will take it forward sometime soon. Yes, the situation in Gaza is absolutely appalling. The committee has seen mountains of evidence of war crimes being committed. As someone that used to be an aid worker and has worked in conflict zones, the way that we have seen Israel target and kill aid workers in that conflict and then try to hide the evidence, the way we're seeing hospitals being targeted. There were several ex-British servicemen that were working as aid workers in Gaza that were deliberately targeted and killed by Israel, not for being British servicemen, but for being aid workers in very clear marked vehicles. And yes, the UN, or one of the commissions, has made a determination of genocide. Now, I think that determination is correct. I think what is going on in Gaza right now meets the conditions for being a genocide. Whether or not that really changes the approach the government is taking, I don't know, because we're already seeing with our own eyes the number of war crimes that are being committed, and we've responded, I believe, quite not always quickly as I would like, but in quite a substantial manner. So the UK Foreign Affairs Committee, we conducted an inquiry on this and reported before the summer. We made a number of recommendations to government. So we welcomed the arms embargo, we welcomed the sanctions on extremist ministers. We welcomed the steps to restore funding to UNRWA, all things the last government hadn't done. And we made recommendations that we should recognise the state of Palestine, that we should provide more visas to students in Gaza, and we should take stronger trade embargoes against illegal settlements that are operating out of the West Bank. Now, some of those recommendations have been taken forward by the government as well. So absolutely delighted that last week we, one of those 10 countries to recognise Palestine, and I'm pleased to see that now there are students from Gaza who had courses in the UK who are able to come. That unfortunately hasn't changed the situation on the ground, and in fact the kind of conditions that the Prime Minister set for Israel, should us not to recognise Palestine, have not been met. The opposite has happened. The ceasefire and the other steps that we were taking. So I'm not going to speak for the whole committee, but my view would be that we need to continue to escalate the sanctions against Israel in the same way we would do against any country that is committing these sorts of war crimes. And I think the next step on that escalation is probably sanctions against not just extremist Israeli settlers, but against the settlements which are illegal under international law and being expanded with the deliberate plan to make a two-state solution unviable. We should be expanding sanctions to those settlements as well.
Thank you so much, Alex. Due to time, I'm going to take another round of questions and then ask for some closing remarks from our panel. So this gentleman here with the glasses and the green striped shirt.
Hi there, Lauren Belcross from the Jewish Chronicle. Question to the ambassador specifically. Bahrain obviously normalised relations with Israel in 2020 as part of the Abraham Accords, and you've still maintained relations with Israel throughout the conflict. What's your country's kind of logic behind the current policy towards Israel, and why is it we're seeing seemingly yourselves in the UAE using a lot less aggressive language towards Israel than some European countries, and you've, I think, got better diplomatic relations than, say, with Ireland than with Israel? So I'd just be interested to hear your logic for that.
Thank you so much. And then we've got the gentleman, yes, blue shirt.
Question for the Minister, Tim Ripley from Defence Eye. 2 weeks ago, a British ally was attacked by Israel. The British embassy, its windows were shaken, thousands of British citizens were put at risk. Now, the RAF maintains a joint fighter squadron with the Qataris in Qatar, Typhoon fighter planes on quick reaction alert. Can you give a commitment that if the Israelis do this again, our planes will help the Qataris defend their country against the Israeli Air Force?
Thank you so much. And one last question. Do we not have any women who want to ask a question? Because I have a lot of men asking questions. Oh, sorry, they all put their hands down. Sorry. We'll have, yes, gentlemen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for the insightful discussion. I'm Karwan, Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq's head of the mission to the UK. 2 years ago, British government and Foreign Office has initiated conflict prevention unit to prevent conflicts from happening. Does the government still maintain the unit, and what are the elements and resources they use to prevent conflicts from happening, as we see the rise of conflicts happening in the Middle East? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Ambassador, would you like to take the question from the Jewish Chronicle around the Abraham Accords and maintaining the relationship with Israel in light of a more harsher stance from the West?
Sure. Bahrain is quite unique in our part of the region. We have a small Jewish community living in Bahrain. They escaped prosecution in the region and sought refuge in Bahrain almost 150 years ago. So that community still lives. They have a synagogue. It's actually a working synagogue in Bahrain. So the relationship goes deep and further back, when we hosted the Peace for Prosperity meeting with Gerald Kushner in the first Donald Trump era, there was supposed to be both sides on the table, the Israeli and the Palestinian, and a new vision came up, and what the result of that conference was that not a whole lot of Bahrainis actually objected to the Israelis being there. And I remember an Israeli official telling me that she was walking down the souk in the Manama market, and she didn't feel any hostilities. In fact, the Bahrainis were wondering if she was this sort of official, and came and sort of greeted her rather than, saying anything bad about her. So that gave us an indication that the Bahrainis were ready for peace. And since Bahrain is sort of a peaceful nation that wants to play a role in the Middle East, we've signed the Abraham Accords, and from that we wanted this relationship to be more strategic. And what the logic there is, during the conflict and even before the conflict, being in the table gives you leverage. And I remember when the Jordan bridge was sort of not closed, but the hours reduced to 5 p.m. A lot of Jordanians, Palestinians suffered from that, and it was the Bahrainis and the Moroccans that have signed the Abraham Accord. They've convinced the Israeli government to extend that timing to 12 a.m. So being in the table gives you a bit of leverage, gives you access directly to the government. And during the conflict, as the only embassy that was working in Tel Aviv, we were actually a sort of a consular section for the whole Middle East that had people living in Israel and wanted their sort of services attended to. So we were doing that on behalf of the whole Middle East and trying to bridge any gap that could be filled by being there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Louise, I'll come to you on the last two questions around the embassy being attacked and the RAF supporting Qatar. Yes, correct? Yes. And the conflict prevention unit, and if the government still maintains that unit.
Yeah, so I think, the Foreign Secretary made it very clear, and our entire focus has been on not broadening or escalating this crisis. And I think, I'm not going to comment on operational deployments at all, but I would just sort of gently say that the priority is for our actions is to see whether or not this is getting us closer to a ceasefire and closer to conflict resolution, or do we risk contributing to an escalation? And as to your point about the prevention unit, I'm afraid I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I shall endeavour to find out.
Thank you so much. So, because we've basically run out of time. Maybe Alex, you could give with 2 minutes,
Sure,
1 minute,
sure, yeah.
just some closing views.
Yeah, very, very happy to. I mean, I would go a lot further than Louise. That was not a step towards a ceasefire, but an attack on another sovereign country, killing
That's not
peace
what I
negotiators.
said. Sorry, that's not at all what I said.
Oh, okay.
No,
Then I've misinterpreted.
No, sorry. In answer to the suggestion about the use of the RAF,
Yes.
we should look at for always about whether our steps are taking us towards de-escalation. It wasn't a comment on Israel's actions at all. Sorry, Alex.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement.
God, imagine if that was...
fundamental with my good friend Louise. I know a little bit about the unit in the FCDO, so I'll mention that. There used to be something called the Conflict Security and Stability Fund. That's now changed into the Integrated Security Fund. It's a small pool of money, small compared to our overall development budget, that pays for people to work on these conflict prevention measures. If we were going to be investing in the Israel-Palestine Fund for Peace, it would be that sort of mechanism that we would use. FCDO does a lot more than just support peace-building organisations through finances. We also have this massive diplomatic network. We do our work at the UN. Our ambassadors, a bit like yourself, Mr. Ambassador, are working hard behind the scenes constantly to prevent conflict because it's in our national interest. Final words, I will say that we're kind of losing the the battle of ideas in the Middle East. I think your comment about Houthis now being seen as somehow fighters that are fighting for justice. I have a very large Yemeni community in my constituency, and they're predominantly from the part of Yemen that has been at war with the Houthis. And I speak to people from that community, and they're cheering on the Houthis because they are seeing the destruction and the violence, and they're seeing these images, and they're feeling that the international community as a whole is not doing enough to stop Israel, and at least Yemen is doing something. Now, I disagree fundamentally with that view, but we cannot escape the fact that the view on the street, both in our constituencies, among certain populations, and certainly across the Middle East, is extremely unsympathetic to the West's response. And whilst we absolutely should be working on peace building, we should be working on conflict resolution, we need to do a much better job of communicating how that we're actually the side that is standing up for justice. We're the side that is working hard to prevent conflict, because that's not the feeling that people are getting at the moment.
Thank you so much, Alex. Mr. Ambassador, final thoughts in very quick 1 minute.
Sure. Just a final thought. I think the United Kingdom could play a major role in the day after, especially that it is being perceived in the Middle East as an honest broker. And I think using civil societies as well as people on the ground to facilitate and to make this sort of new initiative that has sort of the blessing almost of the Arab states, just fine-tuning here and there, and I think we have a deal.
Thank you so much. Louise, final thoughts.
So I think I just want to really quickly touch on the civil society point, because I think that was really well made. When we look at Northern Ireland, which I think still remains one of the most successful conflict resolution processes there, and every day it's because the people of Northern Ireland choose to walk together in peace, and it is not an easy decision for them. And there are many wounds that still run deep. But when you see very small organisations, neighbourhood organisations, people just simply wanting to make a difference on the street where they live, and they reach out and try and build bridges. And it's that, I think, which is making the peace so enduring. So excellent point.
Thank you so much, Louise. Gabrielle, final thoughts.
I hope when we come back next year, things will look a little different, and there will have been a long-term ceasefire and some movements towards what end of conflict would look like. I'm just currently writing a book called Let's Agree to Disagree. And I think the key is when you go into the Palestine-Israel conflict, there are parallel narratives, there are different stories, and when you put people together, it does not change minds. People have got deep histories and traumas and ways they see the world. But the essence of it is, how do we manage to put this together and live with our differences without violence?
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking our panel. And just before I do that, stay engaged with the Labour Foreign Policy Group. We've got lots of other events at conference today. So please do check us on the app. And please join me in thanking our panel. We've talked a lot of issues, and I really want to thank them for their time. Thank you, everyone.